at the Relationship Roundtable. It's the Scott Murray Show with Steve, Calvin, Trey, and Scott.
And we are back, and it's 5:51, almost 5:52. We're here for the quick home stretch. Trey?
Well, I brought Brian on originally to talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies because I think it's just fascinating, and I think I wish I would have invested $1,000 in Bitcoin in about 2012 because then I'd be retired now, and I didn't understand anything about it until Brian and I were exchanging some emails on it and talking about it, and I wanted Brian to talk about it because he knows more about it than anybody I know. So, what is Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
Well, when you're talking about cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin is one of 1,500 different cryptocurrencies right now, and they keep popping up more and more each day. And they're all basically based on this concept of blockchain. So it's actually an or underwriting technology, I should call it, called blockchain. So, for example, in the physical world, imagine, Trey, you have a crisp, clean $20 bill that you received directly from the mint. And so when you got that mint, the mint would have given you essentially a certificate of authenticity called a Genesis block. And it's the block that says, we created this and Trey has it. And then you and I are talking and I say, hey, Trey, you remember that time that you said UT was going to beat my Horned Frogs and pick a sport? I mean, you're going to owe me either way.
Yeah, any sport lately.
Sport. So you give me that $20 as a result of that. Well, what has to happen in all of the cryptocurrency world is that bill has to be authenticated, and then it also has to be verified that you own it. So a third party, we go to Steve, and Steve goes through the verification process, and he unpacks that Genesis block and looks at it and says, yep, this is a valid $20 bill, and yes, Trey has authority to transfer it. So then what he does is he will record the transaction that you are handing that to me, and he will verify his proof of work. And it's called proof of work in the Bitcoin world, and it's basically the effort that you went through to verify the validity of it. And then what he'll do is he boxes that proof of work up along with the transaction information, and he attaches it to the chain. So he attaches it to that Genesis block.
So it's like a deed record, deed history.
Very, very similar. And then every time it transfers, it goes through that same process.
But what do you do with it?
Well, you spend it, and you actually right now, the reason everybody's excited about them is because there are 1,500 different ones that are out there. So everybody's wanting to get into what is going to be the next big thing, just like Trey was talking about.
And we were talking earlier about history and learning history and automobile makes. Like at the beginning of the last century, beginning of the 20th century, there was hundreds and hundreds of people making cars, and then it all shrank down to the big three. Mm-hmm. And so, do you think eventually that's what's going to happen here?
It's what's going to have to happen. One of the key things that's going to be a limiting factor on this is, it's called cryptocurrency. So anytime you have the word crypto, you're talking about encryption. So the one thing that was kind of glossed over in that example is that block that Steve had to unpack to verify the validity and the transaction stuff is encrypted with a very strong encryption key. And so it takes a lot of work and a lot of processing power to do that. And
but don't you have to have retailers who are willing to accept this currency?
And that's what we're starting right now. There a lot of these, unfortunately, Bitcoin got most of its oomph from the ransomware world. People were getting these ransomware viruses that were encrypting their entire computer, and then there would be a message on the screen that would say, we've entirely encrypted your computer, send this $10,000 in Bitcoin to this account, and we will send you the decryption key. And that only worked about 70% of the time, but that created a huge market for it. I went to a number of seminars that had FBI special agents that talked about cybersecurity, and they said officially the FBI was going to say no, don't negotiate with terrorists, you don't pay them, you just encourage them. He said as an agent in the field, I will tell you your organization really needs to have a Bitcoin account and have that at the ready. So that's where that all started. And all of these, the hope is that they're going to create their own ecosystem and be entirely clear of any of the government agencies and government regulatory agencies.
So really what you tell me is these
international monetary
these guys that are doing this, holding people hostage and getting bitcoins in return. Now they're all multi-gazillionaires because bitcoins are worth how much per coin?
Last I saw was about 8,500.
Yeah.
They if they still have them.
And in 2012, you could buy 3 for $1, I think.
But how do they cash them in? Because there's a chain of title, so can't you see where all their coins came from?
Well, and so that's why with all these different ones that have actually come about, the reason for these new currencies are for that very reason. Bitcoin is very, very, very secure. That chain of title, as you call it, is actually very extensive. But there have been some other ones like Monero that are easier to break, and also they're also easier to have the anonymity. So,
Brian, this is an interesting topic, and I think we'd really like to have you back. But we're out of time today.
Got about 20 seconds left.
So, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone, for listening. Trey, you got any final words for the audience in about 5 seconds?
Give your life as a go-giver, share your life as a go-getter.
That's it.
I
Thank
think
you,
I got that
Texas.
backwards.
We'll see you next time.